In 2021, I had a dealership reach out to me and offer me $100,000 more than I owed on my Aventador. It was just out of the blue. And I'd only had the Aventador for about 6 months. But here's the thing, it has nothing to do with the car and everything to do with how I think about money. Right now, there's two types of people. There is the person who is grinding through this economy and they're cutting costs and they're super stressed and they're just trying to make it day to day, week to week, month to month. And then there is the other person who's quietly moving around just a little bit different. He's not louder, he's not aggressive, just different. And what separates them isn't their connections or luck or any outside source. It is a single shift in how they see money. In 2021, I bought a Lamborghini Aventador, and not as a flip or an investment. It was purely because a V12 Lamborghini that the doors go up was a dream of mine since I was a little kid. So when the opportunity arose, I jumped on it and traded in a Acura NSX and a McLaren 600 LT, and I put some money down and I bought the car. I wasn't in either of the other two cars with a ton of equity. They had a few thousand each maybe, so nothing major, but that's okay. I put the remaining number down so that the bank would give me the loan and I could own my dream car. But I did believe that car had real value. Like I've said countless times, I buy these cars as savings accounts, so I have to make sure that I'm not just throwing money away. I'm actually buying a car that has value and not just a impulse purchase by me. I have to make sure research-wise that makes sense at that number. So at that time, COVID was doing a lot of weird things to the used car market, and the supply chain was broken. So the value of used cars was going up. So I a little bit thought I might be buying at the peak, but I still had faith that the replacement Lamborghini hadn't really been announced yet. You heard rumors or whatever, having electric something involved. So people were starting to really grab a hold of the V12s because they were afraid they were going away. And the used car market was still going up, up, up. And it was a great time to be able to know which cars are valuable and get into them if that's what you're looking to do. Like I said, this was not that move for me. I obviously knew the car itself would be valuable, and it was mostly to have the experience of owning that car. Well, 6 months into owning it, the same dealership I bought it from called me, and they offered me a deal I couldn't refuse, which was just about $100,000 over what I owed on the car. And with what I put down and the positive equity in the other cars, that was like $70K more than I paid for it. And then the remaining $30K was what I'd put into it. And I said yes, obviously. Not because I needed to get out of the car or I couldn't afford it, but because that is the goal of these cars for me. Now, it doesn't hurt that it wasn't the best car for me because I'm too big. I'm 6'5", a little bit wider as far as shoulders and stuff. And I didn't fit spectacularly well in it. The thing I really want to emphasize here is that's what all my cars are to me, is I treat them like savings accounts or assets. And I know if you listen to Dave Ramsey or any of those guys, you think of cars as depreciating assets, and they can be. But if you buy them right, they can be just an asset. I didn't magically make this deal happen. I bought the car for a reason, with intent and the knowledge, knowing it will hold its value, and the market made me correct, and I made a great deal of money off of it. And that's the lesson here, is knowing the value of the things you're buying and not just impulse buying. So here's what I see happening right now is small business owners are cutting costs. They're getting rid of the team lunches and subscriptions and receptionists or any non-essential employees, and they're drastically cutting back on everything, except they're not cutting back on the fancy cars and like watches or designer clothing. And that's because they think those are signals to their customers or to their followers on social media that everything's okay. While I understand the thinking behind it and what it is exactly they think they're doing, all you're doing is creating bills, payments, and responsibilities for things that won't directly bring you money. This is my Tesla. This is my work car. It actually makes me money. So it does make sense to hang on to that. If my company starts struggling and if I think changes need to be made, I don't hang on to this and the Rolex and the Louis. I have to make smart choices, get rid of those extravagant things, and make sure the things I hang on to are like my Tesla, the thing that will generate income and still be able to do what it is I do to make my customers see that I'm okay, which is show up, do a good job. You don't have to have the fancy stuff for the Instagram highlight reel. You need to have the stuff that can help you get through these times by generating income or be an asset that can hold value. So the watches thing, you don't keep it to look successful. You get it and hold the money in it as an asset, just like my Aventador. If you buy it right, you can sell it and get your money back out of it and treat it as a savings account while getting to enjoy it. The difference between the signal or the Instagram highlight reel and the asset isn't how people look at it, it's the value in which it holds. So generally you could boil people down in economies like this into 3 different groups. You have the looks broke, and that's just the people who drive whatever their car is. They're not necessarily concerned about the image or what signal it sends the people around them. You have the looks successful people where they're most of the time in something like a BMW or a Mercedes or the Teslas or Lexuses. Really nice cars, but not cars that hold any real value. They just buy them new or lease them and just keep turning them over and making the car payments. And then you have the looks rich. And those are the people with the exotics that drive them occasionally. They have nicer other cars and overall nicer houses, that type of person where when you drive by, kids are like, they're rich. And here's the problem. When you get into a bad economy, the people who suffer the most are the ones that look successful. The ones with the BMWs and Mercedes and those types of depreciating assets, because there's no value hold in them. Everything is a signal. And yes, people like me like BMWs and Mercedes. It doesn't mean they hold value. There are exceptions to every rule, so feel free to tell me in the comments if G-Wagons or something are holding value, or the SLRs, and there's all kinds of exceptions to the rule. But the general idea is the people who are like that are the most vulnerable because they don't have assets to carry them through or liquid funds to start acquiring assets at the low price. The actual best people in this scenario don't care what group they're in. They only care about acquiring assets at a discount. So when the economy recovers, because it will, the government doesn't want us to be broke all the time. So it will recover. Interest rates will come down. Money will flow freer. And suddenly the job market and pay will go up and everyone will be excited again and go right back to being consumers. And that's when the person who was quietly in the background grabbing up assets can now sell them off for a profit because they made smart moves during a difficult time. And that's the biggest difference, is the people who don't look successful might actually just be buying up assets left and right. The people who look rich might actually be on the verge of bankruptcy because their monthly payments can't keep up with the economy drain right now. So it's all about how you handle the situation and what you can do to hold assets through it, to buy them cheap, sell them at a premium. That boils down to almost everything when you want to make money, is get something at a discount, buy value at a discount, and then sell it at a premium. Sometimes the only way to do that is waiting, and you have to have the means and capability to actually be patient. I broke this down into 5 things you can do to be able to maximize your opportunities in situations like this. This is how rich people get rich. So the first move is cut consumer spending. I'm talking about going out to eat, fast food, or all the streaming services that you probably have and only use one occasionally. Just keep one, get rid of the rest. It could be door dashing at 11 o'clock or late at night to get some crumble cookie or some sort of a dessert, or any of that after 11 p.m. I can't sleep, random consumer purchases. The thing is, those small decisions or those small purchases, they compound and they rob you of opportunity. Step 2 is to replace that consumer spending with asset spending. And you should never buy anything that the second you buy it, it immediately becomes worth less than it was when you bought it. And it can be, you gotta buy things that hold value or appreciate. Things like real estate, certain watches, certain designer clothes or handbags. Anything that will hold your value or make you more money becomes the goal. It is no longer, can I afford it? It's, does this make me more money or less money? Step 3 is don't cut your pricing. And this is one business owners never want to hear, because you start cutting prices to get more customers. But this is the thing you need to understand, is you're more valuable now than you were in a good economy. And all of those customers who are crying and telling you they need a better deal are the same customers who will leave the second the economy comes good. They're not loyal. And what you've got to do is be intentional with your time and fill it with the right customers who, I'm not saying rip them off, but who aren't just looking for the cheapest price. Because if you fill your calendar with people who are just looking for the best deal, they will never stay around and you'll constantly be chasing, trying to get new customers. Whereas if you be intentional right now and you find people who want value and skill and you lean into those customers, you will be able to weather the storm better and not have to be working for quite a bit less when it comes into the profit part. Because let's not get this twisted. We are all in business to make money, which we call profit. And that leads us into move 4, which is to fill your day with intention, not activity. And that's because busyness is the enemy of wealth. And if you're filling your entire schedule full of just anything to feel productive, doesn't matter if you're making $20 or $150, you throw it in the schedule because if I'm busy, I feel productive. And what you're doing is you're actually wasting something you cannot buy back, and that's your time. And in a tight market, every hour spent on a lower profit, lower value job is work that you can't spend on a move that can make you secure and long-term profitable. So I'm not saying don't do anything. Fill the day with intentional work that will get you to the place you want to be. Might feel like you're spinning your wheels. That's okay. You need to go after the high value stuff. Obviously take the jobs that present themselves to you, but don't underquote and overpromise just to fill the schedule. You're actually just trying to do the simple thing of getting the work you want and letting someone else take that work that doesn't actually help you anyway. It just makes you feel more and more desperate because you think, I have no more time to give, and it's because you're giving it away to the low value thing. You have to set your standards and be consistent and intentional with them. Step 5 is when others sell, you shop. And that's how the aventador deal came along. When people are desperate and they're selling low, or dealerships are saying, we got to get this off our lot, it's been sitting too long. Anytime people in this economy are trying to sell stuff discounted or fire selling it, you have to be ready, willing and able to not only buy it in a down economy, but you have to be willing to hold it and then able to let go of it when the time is right. A lot of people will have one or two of the three, but not the third. So the three of those combined is the secret sauce to making money in a down economy. The first key to all of this is you can't be buying if you're spending all your money on the things that are just consumer driven impulse purchases. So make sure you're always double thinking, does this take or to drain, or does it add to? If it drains, don't do it. If it adds to, enjoy it. And that's part of the fun when you use alternative assets versus something like precious metals or real estate, is you get to enjoy them. I could sell this when I'm ready at a peak price, and I'll be able to enjoy it from the time I purchased it to the time I sell it, as long as you take care of it. And again, there's exceptions to everything. If you wreck your car, it's suddenly not worth as much. So you got to be careful. But overall, alternative assets let you live the life you want while being smart with the purchase and the sale and actually getting what you want out of them. So I am not telling you the story or showing you all the cars as a flex. I'm trying to show you what each one represents. So it not only is work and family, togetherness and fun to appreciate what it is I have. And the Tesla is utilitarian for me, and it's work, and it's a value add because it makes me the money. This is what I take. It allows me to price things the way I price them. And then we have the Aston Martins, and those are years and years of compounding good decisions to be able to get to a point that I can afford to own these things, and they don't pull from me or take from me, but simply add two things, which is enjoyment and then a hold or value later when the economy recovers. And that's the key, is making sure that all of your decisions like this are intentional and purposeful, and they aren't accidentally making things harder in your life, but they're adding to it. Never let them take, always try to make them add. I didn't get here hoping the economy would cooperate. I got here because I stopped acting like a consumer and I started acting like someone who was stacking something, and that added to my life instead of taking away. Here's what I want you to sit with from this episode is, what are you actually holding on to? And are you doing it because it signals to other people that you're successful and everything's okay, and that isn't actually building anything for you? And what would you do with that same amount of money that you were throwing at a thing that actually takes from you and put it into something that adds to you? If you like this kind of content, think about hitting that subscribe button. It helps me, and it will let you know every time I come out with these types of videos. And I hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next one.